also, while he's kind of getting the iPad ready and we're kind of talking about the script, I remote reboot the iPad in under 2 minutes. So it is possible and very easy for me to access any system. And I'm not the best hacker. There's people who are a lot better than me, and these systems are absolutely vulnerable. Susan Smith is an attorney that I work with, and on November 24th, 2020, this is the evidence that we had at the time that we submitted to the Canvassing Board to stop the certification because we knew that there was a problem. This stack now represents the complaints that we are filing with the Judicial Board because those canvassers did not do their job. You will find these complaints available at Midwest Swamp Watch under the Minnesota action items. I would encourage you to go ahead, download them, sign them, send them in. Our goal is to flood the Judicial Board at this stage with over 1,000 signatures and 1,000 complaints from across the state. So we need your help in doing that. There's also another complaint in there for Sarah Gruing, who was the judge that ruled on the 2 consent decrees. You can find out about her and what she did and had a duty to do to remove herself because she used to be Senator Amy Klobuchar's political director. She had a duty to recuse herself from those 2 cases. Lightning struck twice, and she alone changed the elections in Minnesota, removing the witness requirements, extending the absentee ballot period receiving time. You need to understand those fact patterns. Minnesota is further ahead in the election corruption than any other state. It's interesting watching this video because here's another piece. How many of you are upset about the drop boxes? Raise your hand. Did you know in the state of Minnesota, we don't even need the drop boxes. The postage is prepaid. So when someone tells you, you are for voter suppression, look them squarely in the eye and ask them where they get their mail. Then tell them, isn't your mailbox closer than the drop box? No, seriously. Isn't your mailbox closer than the drop box? What legitimate reason do we need to have a drop box? Who here wants to watch video camera evidence of a drop box? Just because they say that they're going to have video cameras at the drop boxes, do you think they're going to be able to retrieve the fraudulent ballots? Of course not. Stop them at where it begins. So we've been doing a lot of work over the last year and a half, kind of pointing out and investigating all the different issues in Minnesota and South Dakota. I'm a tax refugee. I used to live here in Minnesota, but 4.5 years ago, I evacuated. All of my life. But I still have my computer consulting business here in the Twin Cities metro area. I also have a new company called D3 Defense that I started out in South Dakota. What's interesting, though, is with my 14 years of elected experience in the state of Minnesota, being on the city council, then being mayor for the city of St. Bonifacius, also being active in the Republican Party for 8 years as co-chair of the 3rd Congressional District, and having 8 years having a seat at the State Executive Committee of the MNGOP, helping campaigns across the state win and lose elections. I understand kind of the scenarios. I understand the basic tenets of politics in Minnesota. Been involved in it. I'm also, with my own computer experience, with my consulting business, I get the political side, I get the technology side. What I didn't realize is in 2016 is my last year being mayor for the city of St. Bonifacius. I had a front row seat to some of the early corruption. In 2016 was the first year that the poll pads were introduced in Hennepin County as a test for the entire state of Minnesota. Within 5 minutes of that poll pad being unboxed, I hacked into it. I let Hennepin County know that these things were unsecure. We were the only city during 2016 in Hennepin County that didn't use the poll pads. We used the manual paper to check in the voters. Hennepin County wanted me to come in and help them, and I said, absolutely not. We shouldn't even cross that line anymore with them. So in Minnesota, we have a high expectations in the way that our government run, as well as we should have high expectations in the way that the elections are conducted. We should not lose sight of that. And now that what you've seen here in the video, you can't unsee it. So some of the top things that you guys need to work on immediately. Number one, ballot boards and election judges. We must have party balance. Across the state of Minnesota, many of the counties are deciding we don't need to have party balance, and they're hiring their employees at the city and the county levels. Now, earlier it was explained that SEIU is a significant organization in politics, correct? Do you find that there's party balance when you're using city and county employees that donate to one organization, which that organization donates to one political party? Don't you feel we should eliminate conspiracy theories by actually bringing both the Democrats, Republicans, and the other two major parties in to provide party balance? Because then those parties that are there counting the ballots, overseeing the election process, eliminate the conspiracy theories because all the issues are dealt with right there and then. What's great is that the Republican Party of Minnesota, along with the candidates that were running for the endorsement, did a good job of exciting the base and getting more people into the precinct caucuses. We more than doubled what happened in 2018 for the governor's race for precinct caucus attendees. We also, in essence, brought in more election judges that signed up. But actually, it's not enough. Even though we went from 3,500 in the presidential election to over 8,300 currently with valid voter IDs, because I helped them work on the data so that we wouldn't get rejected, wanted to create the higher bar. Now, they did submit more election judges, but I'm not sure if they're going to cross the finish line because we were missing phone numbers, email addresses, we didn't know exactly the street address, etc. So it wasn't complete information to make it easy. I'm telling you right now, you have another chance at the apple. Those of you who wish to be an election judge and haven't been contacted yet, be proactive. Call your city, your township, and your county. Find out how to become an election judge for the absentee balloting period, the in-person voting period for both the primary and the general election. Let them be aware that you're available. Remove the excuses of them injecting city, county, and township employees to take away your seat. Is that clear? Number two, cybersecurity. I'll get into like some of the county website scans. Actually, I'll get into it a little bit sooner. And then we'll get into the EAC. That's kind of like the FDA. It's kind of like the CDC. It's kind of a governing body that's supposed to kind of have your back. But I'll show you that it actually doesn't. Then we'll review the tabulators, voting equipment, the e-poll pads, and here's what's fun. Even though the election equipment, the tabulators, they're regulated by the EAC and actually have to go through testing, the poll pads don't. There's no security evaluation to them whatsoever. We'll also look at the claim by frankspeech.com that's concerning for Olmsted County. Olmsted County should actually investigate the claim. Drop boxes. You just saw the concerns brought up by 2000Mules. Get rid of them. We should also look at the performance of the equipment itself. Whether you just want to get rid of all of the machines themselves and go completely to hand count. If they resist, give them another option, which is count all the ballots afterwards anyways. Why do we, when they sit there and say, you're being disrespectful to the election judges, counter them with, actually, no, you were disrespectful to the election judges when you replaced them with machines to actually count the ballots. You got rid of party balance. You got rid of the count must be public. When you put in your ballot into the machine, does it give you a receipt?
No.
Do you know how it interpreted your vote?
Well, you know.
Guess what? You should ask every time, how did that interpret my vote? You should show up for the machine testing and understand how those machines work. Ask the questions. Make it tough on them. It's your responsibility to be satisfied. And I'm tired of us having to prove election fraud. I want them to prove that the election was on the up and up. I want them to prove, just like we do in every single county, when we have financial audits of how they spent the dollars, I want an election audit to actually verify that the machines work at 100%. Did you realize that the EAC actually has a standard that only allows for one error for 1 million votes? So, when Minnesota is only doing 3% of a post-election review across the entire state, we're not even accounting for 1 million votes, are we? So we never meet the standard to evaluate. The other thing is, there's a key role with voter histories. The rolls, the registrations, and those are important. They must be done earlier. If they're sitting there telling us that they need these e-poll pads to help improve that performance, why did they all fail? Why is it on November 29th, 2020, 5 days after they certified the election, 38.9% of the data was not there? You want to know why? Because December 1st is the deadline to file an election contest. How can you go before a judge and say, I question the election when I'm missing almost 40% of the data? I can't tell you all the dead voters, the duplicate voters, the fraudulent voters, etc. We now know some of those answers because we've partnered with some of our counties who've actually gone out there and actually started knocking on doors and asking people, did you vote in the 2020 election? If you did vote, did you vote absentee or did you vote in person? What's stunning is that overall across the state, 4% of the doors that we knock on, they didn't vote in the 2020 election. We want to know who did. The other thing that's stunning is between 7 and 8% didn't vote the way that the counties told us they voted. There's absentee ballots for people that claim that they voted in person. Does that mean their vote was stolen? We also see in a lot of the county records duplicate votes. Over 1,200 duplicate votes across the state of Minnesota. Doesn't sound like a large number, but it does when we go back and revisit Holman Franken. An election separated by less than 400 votes. You guys need to understand this. Law's on your side. You force your city, your townships, and your county to go ahead and basically establish the ballot boards. And they do it by ordinance or resolution. They have the power. Go ahead and take a picture of that. Bring that with you to your county commissioners and ask, do your ballot boards have party balance? If not, bring a resolution and tell them we require it as citizens of your county. Kim Crockett's not wrong when she says eyes on every ballot. If Republican eyes aren't there, available for the ballots, what do you think will happen? Yep, you're right, exactly. Election judge? The cities try to use this as, well, this is election day only. Well, actually, we also have to make sure that the party balance is here as well on election day. But the election judges are also part of the absentee process. So this is that statute there. So what's interesting is that when we talk about restoring confidence in the election, it was interesting Their claim is that November 3rd election was the most secure in American history. Right now across the country, election officials are reviewing and double-checking the entire election process prior to finalizing the results. The coordinating bodies on election infrastructure and security said in a joint statement issued by the Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity, and Infrastructure Security Agency on November 13th, 2020. Here's a discussion piece. In South Dakota, they certified their election on November 10th. Minnesota certified on November 24th. How can they actually make that statement with no proof? Did any of you see any proof of security scans that said we had no intrusions? Nope. So that's why we need to start turning the table on them. Prove it to us. Show us all of your security scans. Show us all of your IT log files that shows that you were up to date on every single system. So far when we ask, they won't give it to us. Why? They say that that's private information. So you're telling me when I just asked today of Wright County and Sherburne County, are you telling me that they're still insecure because you haven't applied the necessary patches that were required in 2020? The security issues back in 2020 shouldn't be relevant anymore if you've kept up with all the patches for almost the last 2 years. Let's also make sure that we're bipartisan in our approach, because Senator Amy Klobuchar also questioned election security. She wasn't wrong. She was asking about election security regarding the elections equipment. We should join her and embrace her in her questioning. She also did it again in 2019, right before the 2020 election. So anybody that says you're a right-wing conspiracy theorist, well, they better bring Amy Klobuchar along with you. Required certification. In Minnesota state statutes, it actually talks about a voting system must be certified by an independent testing authority accredited by the EAC. What's funny is that this is actually a complete joke. The other part of this is that Minnesota actually doesn't really do anything when you read the statutes here. The other thing that's really scary too is that we as conservatives, actually none of the four major parties, have actually done the bottom part, which is that a party chair of a major political party could actually ask for a source code audit. That would cost about $1.2 million to be able to conduct. But the fact that nobody's done it since the statute was put in place speaks volumes. Here's the other thing too. None of your counties have ever asked for the source code audit either. They don't even have the rights to the software that is being used in their counties. That should also speak volumes. This little chart here, this is one that we had done early on. This is, how many of you have a credit card? Raise your hand. Okay, here's the scary thing, so you'll identify. This is looking at all 87 counties in Minnesota and their credit card security on their websites. 52% of them fail. This is a daily activity. So if 52% of them fail at this starting date, how well do you think they're doing with election security? Do you think that's a parallel argument that I can use? So when they say that this was the most secure election, and I sit here and I look at 52% of them failing with basic credit card security, yeah, I got high trust. Actually, wait, let me put an asterisk here. See that line right there? That's the Secretary of State's office. They were completely hackable, and we could actually query the election data, inject data, and read data. Don't worry about that. They say everything's secure. We have evidence contrary to that. That one's actually Wright County, I'm not going to worry about it. The EAC. This is the Election Assistance Commission. This is supposed to be like the CDC of the elections. So this is a drug that we're supposed to believe in, and they're supposed to test everything. This is a bipartisan organization that is supposed to basically have our back. They do and they don't. I will actually tell you they're at least honest, but nobody read it. This is a map of the certified election equipment, the counties that are certified. You'll notice that Minnesota has a little white gaping hole. So I can safely say that 95% of Minnesota is not EAC certified. That's because Minnesota, the Secretary of State basically helps certify that election equipment. But actually, that's kind of a joke. He actually doesn't. What he does is he plagiarizes the information of other test results from the EAC and rewrites it in a certificate. And you can actually see that once you request the information and actually read the Secretary of State's certificate to your county and then read one of the EAC reports for that machine, and you'll notice all of the information in the EAC report on the testing is exactly the same word for word. The dates, the notices, etc.
How come Florida told me that?
Because they also do the same thing like Minnesota where they do a self-certified, but they actually do testing, unlike Minnesota.
Right.
This is literally the EAC certificate, and I want to read this slowly. Too bad we don't have wine here so that you can kind of soak this in. This certificate is not an endorsement of the product by any agency of the U.S. government, and no warranty of the product is either express or implied. Okay, well, they didn't make it, so I'll buy that. But let's go to page 2 of that certificate. The scope of certification. This is where it gets really cool. I'm glad they're honest about this. An EAC certification is not a substitute for state or local certification and testing. Hot flash warning. That means your county should probably test these things, but they don't. They rely on the state and the EAC to do the work, but they don't really. But that's okay. Let's read the last one that I highlighted. This is the shocking one. An EAC certification is not a determination that the system is ready for use in an election. That is literally like somebody giving you medicine for a virus and or a bacterial infection and saying, this is not penicillin, it won't help you at all. You should take 2 of these and call me in the morning. Right? I mean, that would be like the CDC and your doctor saying that. That's ridiculous. Oh, by the way, the EAC didn't care that Microsoft, for the Dominion systems in the state of Minnesota, they were still running Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008, which Microsoft advertised in 2019. Hey, we're going to give you a free upgrade from Windows 7 to Windows 10. You should download that because we're going to stop issuing patches for Windows 7 and Server 2008 on January 14th, 2020. Wink, wink, let's run that ad for an entire year. So that means that those counties that were using the systems were unsecured. And guess what? They still used them in 2021. And some of them still used them in the spring election for the township elections of this year. But that's okay. Don't worry, Steve Simon has your back. Because he hadn't certified any newer Dominion systems, he just got that work done. And now the new systems can be launched within the next 4 weeks in all of these counties. And don't worry, your county doesn't have to really pay for it because he found some extra money called HAVA grant money that the counties can apply for through the Secretary of State's money. So that way your county auditor and election officials don't have to go and explain to the county commissioners that, oops, and we'll get a free upgrade and you don't have to raise the taxes on anybody. Isn't that ridiculous? So they don't have to admit their faults. They get a free system upgrade. Yep. This is actually kind of funny because this one is actually from Wright County. And I asked them, I want to see all of your upgrade reports, log reports, anything that you paid for, etc. This is how bad it is. They up-programmed the scanner board in all of the DS200s. So I asked them, what did they up-program? What did it change? Did you retest any of it? No. Well, that's great. Thanks. And that's before the 2020 election. Or how about this one? They installed 61 DS20s, new firmware, and then upgraded the 50 Automarks to a new firmware. Again, I asked them, did you retest? Recertify? No. They didn't. Oh, dirty little secret. The EAC certificate's only good for 2 years. You're supposed to recertify. This is in South Dakota. We only have one vendor. Minnesota has 3 vendors, Hart, Dominion, and ESNS. But what's interesting is that there are some similarities here, is that ES&S programs the machines, provides the only authorized tech support for the machines, they pick all the vendors, certifies the machines, provides the test ballots, the election ballots, the thumb drives, the memory sticks, and the software. The IT department at most of these counties are either non-existent, they rely on consultants, and they usually don't have the experience or even the authority to go ahead and even check up on these systems, or to even challenge it. The other thing that's interesting here as well is only the precinct totals are printed from the machines, no ballot images are recorded on the machines, and therefore no post-election hand count is really performed. This means there's absolutely no verification that the hand-filled ballots match the machines. That's a South Dakota case. In Minnesota, you do 3% during the post-election review, 3% of the counties. Minnesota and South Dakota is instructing our activists not to provide any information regarding the machines. In the end conclusion, our elections must have local control, local oversight, and local accountability. That's where you come in. You have to ask these questions. If you're not comfortable, you shouldn't utilize it. This is from the EAC. This is actually one of their tests that they help counties self-certify their equipment, which is kind of funny. Right away, the first question is a complete lie. Do you allow remote access to the system through a web portal? Yes or no? Right. All of them is yes. But if you answer yes, your machine's not certified. So they force over to no. Yep. Do you require authentication for a user to access the system? Yeah, but guess what? The username and password, it's the same in all 50 states. The same thing for ES&S. Hardware management. Do you keep the poll system updated and patched? They were so confused on this because guess what? There's the software side and then there's the operating system side. In Wright County, literally a third of their e-poll books were no longer supported by Apple in 2019. So the risk of poll pads versus paper registrations is a direct connection to the Secretary of State. Live data over the internet, they're not certified, they're very expensive. It allows same-day registration. We recommend that you get rid of them all. Yep. Go to paper. The other reason for this is that we actually have evidence that at 3:57 on election day, the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota sent out a tweet, hurry up, get out and vote, we don't have enough votes yet. We were trying to figure out how would he know that? We know that through this. Yep. And after my scan of the Secretary of State's office, we could basically figure out who voted and which areas that they all of a sudden tried to rush voters from. When I talked about the iPads and the iOS support, you can see here in early 2019, the 5th generation of the iPad stopped its support. No more patches for it, no more upgrades. This is the list from Wright County. Look at how many 5th generation iPads that they had during the 2020 election. The election equipment itself, admin passwords are the same across machines, across multiple states. The certificates, the keys are self-signed, so they don't actually use a third party to buy the certificates to make sure that they're actually secure. The third party would actually authorize to make sure that that machine is who it says it is. And by doing a self-sign is a lazy way to basically say, I'm me and you just have to put up with me. That's basically what it is in the internet world. The chips with the manufacturer stamps are still printed in there, so somebody like me, I can literally just pop out that chip or look at it and I can go on the internet and Google it to find out what it does. And if I see that it has a Wi-Fi connection or remote capabilities, I can pretty much hack into that system in moments because there's probably a hacker that's already giving the instructions on how to do it. The machines are easy to manipulate during adjudication, especially with these screens. There's no accountability on the central machines that as you're adjudicating the ballots, there's nobody there with party balance to basically say, oh yeah, that should have been this vote. So we have to look at that. And large vendors do not want to, they don't wish to cooperate with any type of investigation or even the hacking institutes that I'm part of in Minneapolis and in Las Vegas, where there's actually a couple of groups that get together, they buy all of the election equipment on eBay, which actually should be a violation. You shouldn't be selling your previous election equipment on eBay, because guess what that does? It puts everyone else at risk who's still running that machine across the country. Pretty sad. These are the key videos. So you can see that I picked some of the, flagrant right-wing organizations to make the case here. NBC, Fusion, CNN, and also Symantec has their own video that they have out there. So how many of you remember Norton? Okay, so that's an antivirus company.
Yeah.
So they basically went in and they had a video where he purchased one of these off of eBay and he hacked it. And it's pretty interesting, and he talks about some of the same things that I talk about here, where all the chips are there, he was able to get into it right away. He's looking at the error logs and he's seen all the issues with the software right away, and the error logs themselves kind of tip off how to basically get into the machine, because there's so much information that's disclosed. This one here at the Hackers Conference, within an hour and a half of all of the election equipment was hacked at the event. By the end of the weekend, 100% of the machines were hacked. The cost of elections, typically, to do a pure hand count of an election is $7 a ballot. When you add the machines in and just do them by themselves, they're at $14 a ballot. So it's actually more expensive to use the machines than it is to use people. So one of their arguments is, well, it'll take too long to count the ballots. Actually, no. So we had a team in South Dakota that actually counted a county where they had 2,000 ballots. That's a typical precinct size in the state of Minnesota with 6 people. We got all 30 races done in 2.5 hours. Yep.
So, when you fill out the paper ballot in your county office, wherever you go vote, and they feed them into the machine,
Yep.
Is that the machine count there? It's not a poll book, it's a hand ballot.
Yep. So the
They
paper
don't-
ballot, they feed it in,
Yeah.
and then that's
part of
$14.
Yeah.
Yep. The basic price of one of those machines sitting there
Yeah,
is usually about $8,000. And that doesn't include the e-poll book, the maintenance, the software upgrades, plus, but this actually includes the up price, because you have to buy the special ballot from the manufacturer or one of their partner organizations. You can't just go to Kinko's and basically print out ballots in this case. And so the starting gate price of a 2-sided ballot is usually right around 41 cents a ballot. Then for each one of the machines, every time you have a new election, you're at a starting price of about $500 to reprogram each one of those machines. And so if you're in a larger county with 47 of these precincts around, it starts adding up really quickly. So this is the one thing that I think you guys need to figure out real quickly, is that at frankspeech.com, they talk about how there was potential remote interaction with your election systems here in Olmsted County. Lindell's team says that based upon the hacking intrusion into Olmsted County, there were 7,502 votes that were flipped. What is interesting is that counties across the United States are unwilling to prove him right or wrong. Your county owes it to you to determine whether or not these allegations are true or false. This type of allegation should not have existed for this long of a period of time. It is unacceptable. So when we talk about election integrity, we should all be unified as Democrats, Independents, and Republicans to basically look at this and ask our county commissioners, is this possible? Is this true? Okay. So remember when I asked about the question? prove to me that this election was on the up and up. What evidence do you have? This has nothing to do with the election judges and their performance. It's about the performance of the machines and how accurate they were. Wright County had the same thing, 6,762. So we've asked them. Drop boxes. All the drop boxes should be absolutely removed. Get rid of them.
I agree.
You need to tell your county commissioners no more. And any Democrat who sits there and says, oh, you're about voter suppression. Actually, Mr. Democrat and Mrs. Democrat, you're making the voter work harder to go to a drop box. Isn't their mailbox closer? Security cameras do nothing to prevent fraud other than just make us angry. And it's just more money spent. There he is, dropping his ballot. Shoving him in. Post-election reviews. Minnesota only requires 3%. There's higher standards in 10 other states. Connecticut and Hawaii do a 10%. 5% review in the other states. But you know what? Why not go 100%? Treat these tabulators as employees. And there's actually maybe even kind of a more creative idea. I was talking with the county commissioner today. And so the DS200s are typically at all the precinct levels, but at the county level, they have one of the bigger machines there. And in Wright County, he suggested that if he were to use his DS850, he could count the entire county through that DS850 in one day, and to basically put that machine head to head against all of the other machines throughout the county. And then as they're counting it, at the same time, selectively have election judges hand count some of those precincts so that they could have 3 views in select precincts just to give it a test. And I said, that's a great starting point. I hope you suggest it. So I think there's creative ideas to get there because we need to start somewhere. And when I'm looking at a lot of the 3% reviews already, most of them actually have errors. I looked at just the ones from Wright County. What's funny is in their post-election review, there's a box that's supposed to be signed by the county auditor. It was not signed, it was not dated, but it was submitted to Secretary of State Steve Simon on 11/23/2020, one day before the state canvassing board was to meet and certify the entire state. So that means they did it on purpose so that they wouldn't have enough time to actually review it, and she didn't want to sign on the actual line, the legal line. And what's interesting is that the actual worksheets, the hand ones, didn't match the computer generated one. And we just discovered that this morning. So the machines have replaced people without oversight. It eliminated party balance. It eliminated counting shall be public. It creates conspiracy theories. We audit the financial books of cities and counties, but we do not do a full audit of the elections. We provide employee evaluations to county and city employees. We do not really evaluate the election performance of the election equipment. We should treat those machines just like an employee, since they replaced one. The other thing is that we need to complete the voter histories before the county even canvasses their election. We have all of this new technology with these poll books that are supposed to help us get the data faster. I'm suggesting, what's it going to cost to get all that data done the same week as the election by Friday at noon, so that the candidates can start doing the canvassing and start evaluating. And the county has the power to set that standard internally. They don't need state statute. The 3%, the deadline for December 15th of getting the voter histories in, they should exceed minimum expectations. State statutes are minimum expectations. We shouldn't race to the bottom. And the equal paths were promised to help this process. We need to hold them to that. So remember, keep your expectations high. hold these people accountable, and let's start winning elections again. Any questions? Yep.
So, when I went in to vote, they had like a machine that I was supposed to put my ballot in there. Can you ask for it to be hand counted, or can you ask for it to be hand tabulated?
Nope. You have to ask before the election. So for example, at the county level, the counties may decide to use electronic equipment, and they can decide that before the election. And that's state statute. The county may choose to use electronic registration like poll books. So the county actually has those 3 responsibilities, I'll say actually 5. So they have the control of the ballot boards, the voting machines, the electronic registrations, as well as getting the voter histories done in a timely manner, and then also looking at everything else within the city, or the county, to make sure things are on the up and up. They have total control over all of that. They don't need the legislature, which is about to adjourn next Monday.
So, I didn't know that if you voted and then put your ballot through, you could ask immediately if it was recorded the way you voted?
You should start asking.
Yeah, I
And,
didn't
and,
know.
and they won't be able to tell you, you should document that. And so you need to have that as part of your learning experience to kind of go, well, if the election judge doesn't know, and I don't know, how is it, who does know? You know, and so that's part of the testing process. And so this is where I would encourage you that usually about June through August, some of the counties will actually have that public review of the election equipment. Go there, ask questions, ask to fill out the ballots, test the heck out of these things, understand how they work, pressure them. Make sure you're comfortable with it. If not, you go to the county commissioners and say, hey, I went to the testing and they wouldn't let me fill out a ballot. That seems unfair. How am I supposed to be comfortable with this thing? You know, and yep.
I have one more question. How are we supposed to get rid of these voting machines?
That's at
What's
the,
the drop-off?
so to get rid of the machines, you have to work with your county commissioners. And here's the other thing. If you find that you have bad county commissioners, today was the first day that you could actually file to replace them yourself and run as a candidate. And you have until the end of the month. Now you could also use that filing as a political point to basically pressure them to let them think that somebody is about to stampede and beat them in an election. And you might be able to head fake them and get them into compliance.
Okay. So when I went in to vote, okay, I went in to vote in person.
Okay.
They said, oh, you already mailed in your ballot. How would you handle something like that? Because I had to mail it in.
So then what you want to do is you will want to ask, I want to see the outer envelope and the signature. Okay. If they don't have it, they are in violation and it's a felony charge against the county auditor.
No, that's at the time that you're all doing this, like, that's
Yep. And then so you should be able to go to the county office and be able to review that outer envelope. Yep.
How does cities fit in with?
You still can.
So I live in, let's go there, we're a good insight. We got, city council and the city.